The morning light spills across the floor, soft and silent. But inside, there's noise. Thoughts rushing. Plans forming. The mind already halfway through the day before the body even leaves the bed. You reach for your phone, not because you need to, but because you don't know what else to reach for. A quick scroll. A new post. A new goal. A new desire quietly whispering, "You could have more." It's subtle, that voice. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It seduces. It makes you believe that peace is always just one more achievement away. One more milestone. One more version of you that will finally be enough. You tell yourself it's ambition, growth. But beneath all of it, there's a quiet panic. A fear that if you stop wanting, you'll fall behind. That if you stop chasing, life will stop mattering. We call it progress. But if you slow down and really listen, what you might hear isn't progress, it's hunger. A hunger that never ends. Every ad, every quote, every social feed fuels it. Want more, become more, prove more. And so you keep running, mistaking exhaustion for purpose, mistaking stimulation for meaning. There's always another level, another upgrade, another version of happiness just out of reach. But have you ever wondered, what happens when you finally get what you wanted? The new job. The new car. The person you thought would complete you. The moment comes, and for a brief second, it feels like peace. But it fades. The mind moves the finish line again. Now that I have this, I need that. It's an endless cycle, the temporary relief followed by the familiar ache of not yet. This is the great illusion, that peace lives on the other side of wanting. That once you get what you crave, the craving will disappear. But wanting doesn't dissolve when it's satisfied. It expands. The more you feed it, the hungrier it grows. Maybe you've felt it, that quiet emptiness that appears after every achievement. The one no one talks about. The moment when the applause fades, when the messages stop, when you're left with yourself. It's strange. You should feel proud. You should feel happy. But something inside you whispers, "Is this it?" And so you search again. Another goal, another distraction, another reason not to sit still. Because stillness feels dangerous. It feels like silence, and silence feels like failure. The world has trained us to equate wanting with living, as if desire is proof of existence. But what if it's the opposite? What if endless wanting is what keeps you from actually living? What if the chase itself is the reason peace always feels distant? We've learned to glorify the climb, but never to ask why we're climbing. We've been taught to pursue, but not to pause. To acquire, but not to question what it costs. And what it costs is subtle, but heavy. It's your presence. Your ability to actually be where you are. Every moment of wanting pulls you out of now, out of your body, out of your breath, out of life itself. You live in the future, always reaching, always leaning toward what isn't yet. You can see it in people's faces, that restless look, that low hum of unease. Always somewhere else in their minds, never quite here. They call it motivation, but it's closer to fear. A fear of not having enough. Of not being enough. And maybe, beneath all our ambitions, what we really want isn't the thing. It's the feeling we believe it will bring. Security. Or belonging. But you can't reach peace by running away from the discomfort of now. You can't force stillness through striving. Every grasping motion, even when disguised as self-improvement, keeps you one step away from what you're actually looking for. There's a quiet paradox at the center of all this. The more you want peace, the more it slips away. Because wanting, by nature, is tension. It's the mind saying, what is not enough. And peace, true peace, can only exist in acceptance. You can't hold peace in a clenched fist. You can only receive it when your hands and your heart are open. So maybe the real question isn't how to get what you want. Maybe it's how to stop needing so much to begin with. Because somewhere between ambition and obsession, between purpose and craving, we forgot how to just be. We forgot the art of enough. And until you remember that, until you let go of wanting, you'll keep chasing the illusion of peace without ever tasting it. Desire has always been the fire of human life. It's what builds civilizations, creates art, fuels science, and drives innovation. The world we live in, every structure, every invention, every story, began with someone wanting something different from what was. But somewhere along the way, this creative impulse turned into an endless chase. The same force that once made us evolve began to enslave us. We forgot how to use desire as a tool and started being used by it. It's easy to think desire is harmless, just a natural part of being human. But look closely, and you'll see its duality. On one side, it's creation, the impulse to grow, to express, to bring something new into existence. On the other, it's escape, the attempt to fill an inner void with something external. The difference is subtle, but it determines whether you live freely or remain trapped in psychological hunger. Buddha called desire the root of suffering, not because wanting is inherently evil, but because it binds the mind to constant dissatisfaction. Every desire, fulfilled or not, creates attachment. You start to measure your peace by the presence or absence of what you crave. You're happy when things go your way, miserable when they don't. Life becomes a series of highs and withdrawals, like an emotional addiction. Carl Jung described this in another language, the language of the shadow. The parts of you that feel unworthy, unseen, unloved, all live in that shadow. And from that darkness, desire grows. You want success not because success itself is sacred, but because failure terrifies you. You want love not simply to give, but to prove your worth being kept. You want peace not to live fully, but to stop feeling lost. Desire is often the disguise of your deepest wound. When Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate," he was pointing at this. Most of what you chase isn't chosen freely, it's dictated by old pain. You run toward certain things because you're running away from others. You think you're pursuing meaning, but you're really avoiding emptiness. Nietzsche, too, spoke about the will to power, the innate drive to overcome, to transcend limitation. But the question is, overcome what? If the will to power isn't tempered by awareness, it becomes domination, the endless attempt to control life, people, and outcomes. But when awareness enters, the will to power becomes something different, mastery over the self. The power to see a desire arise, and not be ruled by it. This is where philosophy meets psychology, in the observation of craving. Most people never question their desires. They assume wanting something automatically makes it worth wanting. But what if every desire has a hidden message? What if each one is saying, "There's a part of you that believes it's incomplete"? The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus taught that freedom doesn't come from having everything go your way, but from aligning your will with reality. When you no longer demand that life must bend to your preferences, you become untouchable. You stop being thrown around by gain and loss, praise and blame. You remain centered, because your peace no longer depends on external conditions. But modern culture has built an empire on the opposite idea. It tells you to never be content, to want more, earn more, become more. It disguises craving as purpose and insecurity as drive. It sells the illusion that happiness is a destination, that if you just work hard enough, buy the right things, achieve the right goals, you'll finally arrive. Yet no one ever arrives. The more you have, the more you fear losing it. The more you achieve, the more you realize it changes nothing fundamental. The same restlessness, just dressed in better clothes. It's like climbing a mountain that has no summit. You push harder, breathe heavier, tell yourself the view will be worth it, but every time you reach a peak, you see another one ahead. You tell yourself this next one will be different, higher, final. But it never is. The mountain never ends. And maybe the problem isn't that the mountain is endless. Maybe the problem is that we keep climbing the wrong one. Because the mountain of desire has no top, it's made of the very thing that keeps you moving, the belief that this is not enough. It's a loop, a self-perpetuating hunger. And the moment you stop and look around, you realize you've been walking in circles. What's strange is that this realization doesn't come as despair, it comes as relief. Because for the first time, you see clearly that nothing you've ever achieved or acquired has truly added to your being. They've changed your circumstances, yes. But you, the silent observer behind all of it, have always remained the same. Alan Watts once said, The desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. In other words, wanting peace is the surest way to lose it. The more you crave stability, the more unstable you feel. The more you chase happiness, the more aware you become of its absence. So what's the alternative? To stop wanting altogether? To renounce life? That's not freedom, that's suppression. The key isn't to destroy desire, but to understand it, to see through it. When you observe desire without judgment, it starts to lose its grip. You begin to notice the pattern, how every wanting begins with a tension, a subtle discomfort, a whisper of lack. And how, once you recognize it, you have a choice. You can either chase the object that promises relief, or you can stay with the feeling itself. If you stay long enough, the energy of wanting starts to dissolve. It loses its urgency. What's left isn't emptiness, it's spaciousness. Awareness itself. This is the turning point. The moment when desire transforms from a master into a messenger. It no longer controls you, it reveals you. Each craving becomes a doorway into understanding yourself. Every I want becomes a quiet invitation to ask, what am I really seeking? Maybe it's not the money, or the recognition, or the person. Maybe it's the feeling of being enough, the sense of resting safely within your own being. And that's the paradox at the heart of this journey. The peace you keep searching for can't be found through wanting. It only appears when the wanting quiets down. The more you try to possess it, the more it escapes. But the moment you stop grasping, it begins to appear, like a reflection on still water. This is where the story shifts, where the climb ends and surrender begins. The moment you stop trying to reach the summit, you might finally realize that peace was never above you. It was beneath your feet the entire time. At some point, something inside you begins to break, not in the way that hurts, but in the way that sets you free. You start to notice that the things you've been chasing no longer taste the same. The thrill fades faster. The victories feel hollow. The noise of wanting becomes unbearable. You begin to suspect that the answer isn't out there anymore, that maybe it never was. It often begins with exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep fixes. A spiritual fatigue, born from years of chasing what always runs. You wake up one day and realize that you've spent so long trying to fix, improve, and become, that you've forgotten how to simply be. You've mistaken movement for meaning, control for peace, effort for love. And suddenly, for the first time, you stop. It's a small moment, almost unnoticeable. The world keeps spinning, but you don't move. You sit there breathing, feeling. And for a second, there's silence. Not the silence of boredom or emptiness, but a silence that feels sacred. The kind of silence that reveals rather than hides. It's uncomfortable at first, like standing in sunlight after years underground. But in that stillness, you begin to see clearly. Every desire, every fear, every urge to control was just another attempt to run from yourself. This is where surrender begins. Not as a dramatic act, but as a quiet shift. We misunderstand surrender. We think it means giving up, losing, or becoming passive. But surrender is not defeat, it's alignment. It's the recognition that fighting reality doesn't change it. That control is an illusion, and peace comes from allowing life to move as it does. Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. In our choice lies our growth and our freedom." That space, that pause, is where surrender lives. You begin to realize that peace isn't about manipulating the external world. It's about expanding that inner space, the gap between what happens and how you react. In that gap, you stop being a puppet pulled by craving and fear. You become an observer, a witness. Imagine sitting by a river. The water rushes by, full of leaves, branches, reflections. That river is your mind, your thoughts, desires, memories, anxieties. You've spent your life trying to control its flow, to stop it from moving the way it does. But the river never listened. It just kept flowing. Now, for the first time, you stop trying to dam it. You sit by its edge. You watch. You notice. And in that watching, something miraculous happens. You see that the river was never the problem. The struggle to control it was. You realize you are not the river. You are the sky above it, vast, untouched, unchanging. When you stop identifying with your desires and thoughts, when you stop believing every impulse is you, a deep peace begins to unfold. The craving doesn't disappear overnight, but it loses its authority. You start to see desire arise like a wave, crest, and fade. You don't have to act on it. You just let it pass. This is freedom, not the freedom to get whatever you want, but the freedom to not be ruled by what you want. Alan Watts described it perfectly: muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. The more you try to control your inner world, the murkier it gets. The more you allow it to settle, the clearer it becomes. In this stillness, something unexpected happens. You stop needing life to go your way. You stop measuring moments by how well they serve your plans. The tension in your chest softens. The need to prove, to chase, to win, dissolves. And what's left isn't emptiness. It's peace. A peace that doesn't depend on anything, because it isn't built on conditions. You start to see beauty in ordinary things again. The sound of rain. The warmth of sunlight on your skin. The simplicity of breathing. You realize that these moments were always there, but you were too busy wanting to notice. And when the mind tries to return to its old patterns, the planning, the comparing, the craving, you gently notice it and smile. You see it for what it is, just thought, just movement. You no longer believe the story that peace exists somewhere else, in some other version of you. This surrender is not a one-time event. It's a practice. Remembering. Every day, you will forget and want again. Every day, you'll have to return, back to the quiet space where wanting dissolves. The ego will resist, whispering that you're being lazy, that you're falling behind, that without craving you'll lose your edge. But this, too, is just another trick of the mind. The part of you that only knows how to survive through striving. But life isn't asking you to stop caring or stop growing. It's asking you to grow without grasping, to care without clinging, to participate in life fully, without demanding it fulfill your expectations. This is the subtle art of surrender, not the absence of desire, but the absence of dependence. You still move, still act, still dream, but you no longer chase peace through outcomes. You bring peace to them. There's a moment in this process when everything gets quiet, a kind of stillness that doesn't feel like absence, but presence. The air feels fuller, the light softer. You realize that what you've been calling peace all this time wasn't something to be achieved, but something that was always here, hidden beneath the noise. You see that the moment you stop trying to possess peace, you start to taste it. It's like standing in the middle of a forest after rain, everything glistening, the air thick with stillness. You can feel life moving around you, but you're not trying to hold any of it. You just stand there, breathing, aware, complete. Peace is not something you find. It's what remains when you stop searching. This is the turning point of every spiritual and psychological journey, the collapse of illusion. The realization that you don't need to become something else to feel whole. The truth is, you've never been separate from peace. You were just too busy wanting to notice it. And when you finally let go, life softens. Not because the world changes, but because you do. The battle ends, and in its place, there's a quiet that doesn't need to be earned, justified, or explained. It just is. That quiet becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Not an ending, but a beginning. The beginning of a life lived from stillness, not seeking. From presence, not pursuit. From enoughness, not lack. You realize, at last, that surrender was never the loss of control. It was the discovery that control was never needed. Morning again. The same sunlight spills across the same floor. The same world waits. The noise, the movement, the endless invitations to want. But something in you has changed. The silence you touched hasn't left. It lives quietly inside you now, like a still lake beneath the surface of daily life. You move slower, speak softer. You listen more. The world hasn't grown quieter, you have. You still have desires, of course. You still dream, plan rich, but there's no desperation in it anymore. The difference is invisible to others but vast within you. What was once a chase has become a dance. You move not because you're lacking, but because you're alive. You create not to prove something, but to express something. You work, love, build, and rest, not to become more, but because, in some quiet way, you already are enough. It's strange at first, to live without the tension of wanting. For so long, it felt like fuel, the reason you woke up, the engine of meaning. Without it, you expect emptiness. But what comes instead is clarity. You start noticing things you'd overlooked. The way light changes throughout the day, the way silence has its own music, the way your breath anchors you back to now. You find yourself smiling at small things, not because they're new or impressive, but because they are. You begin to understand what Alan Watts meant when he said, "Life is not a problem to be solved but an experience to be lived." The urge to fix, improve, and reach begins to dissolve, replaced by something gentler, participation. You stop treating life as a task to master and start treating it as a conversation, one that doesn't need to be controlled to be beautiful. Sometimes you forget. The old patterns return, whispering that you should be further ahead by now, that you're wasting time, that others are moving faster. But then you pause, take a breath, and remember, there is nowhere to get to. You're already here. The race only exists in the mind that believes it's behind. You start to notice how the world keeps trying to sell you dissatisfaction. Every screen, every story, every promise, designed to remind you of what you lack. But when you've tasted stillness, those messages lose their power. They sound hollow. They bounce off the quiet space inside you that no longer believes in the myth of not enough. This doesn't mean you stop engaging with life. You still build, create, fall in love, make mistakes. But you do it from peace, not for peace. The need to force outcome softens. You trust the flow of things, the intelligence of life moving through you. You begin to see that letting go was never about withdrawal, it was about participation without possession. You learn that peace isn't a reward for getting everything right. It's the space that holds you even when everything goes wrong. It's the stillness that remains untouched when the mind trembles, when plans fail, when seasons change. There's a quiet confidence that starts to grow, not the loud kind built on certainty, but the soft kind built on trust. You no longer need to control every detail. You don't need to chase what's meant for you. You realize that what's truly yours will arrive in its own time, and what leaves was never meant to stay. And when the mind asks, "But what now?" you smile. Because there is no now what. There's only now. Life becomes simple again. Not easier, not perfect, just simple. You cook. You walk. You watch the sky. You listen when someone speaks instead of waiting for your turn to respond. You stop living life like a means to an end and start inhabiting each moment as an end in itself. And this is the taste of peace. Not dramatic, not ecstatic, but gentle, familiar, like remembering something you've always known. When you let go of wanting, life doesn't give you less. It gives you back everything you already had, this breath, this heartbeat, this moment, untouched by comparison or craving. Because peace was never hiding. It was waiting, quietly, beneath the noise of wanting, beneath the layers of striving, beneath the endless search for more. And now, as the day begins again, the same light, the same world, you finally see that nothing outside you ever needed to change. The only thing that had to be released was the illusion that something was missing. You've been running toward peace your whole life. But peace was never running from you. It was always here, patient, still, and whole, waiting for the moment you stopped wanting long enough to feel it.